Okay, so I've gotten started here with getting us set up so that we can take a quick look at search scopes before we move on to our next thing. So what we've got here is a new animal struct type, okay? So it's got a fun fact that's nullable, right? And it's nil by default. It has a list of biomes available to it, and biomes are an enumeration, or an enum, with these different cases: plains, domestic, forest, desert, etc., right? And one thing I just realized I wanted to do, I want to make this a string-backed enum so that we can quickly change these into strings as needed, okay? So because this starts out as an empty array, and actually, frankly, it should not be an array, okay? This is just, one thing you should note. It should be a set, okay? When you're doing a thing of enums, typically you want it to be a set, container of enums, not an array, usually. Unless you want to have multiple cases of that enum exist for some reason. But that's not the case here. These are basically categories that we're dropping our animals into, okay? So now I'm just kind of going through here and modifying our things from strings into these. Now, once again, this looks a lot kind of like, things that you would want to, code in from JSON and stuff. We looked at how to do that when we talked about getting stuff from an API, right? Getting stuff from an API would look a lot like, it would come in looking a lot like this. So we're going to go through here. We're going to just, set the biomes for all of our different creatures, okay? So cats are both domestic and desert, right? I guess, we can also add a savanna, right? Because they're on the savanna. I don't know. Who's into biology? Who likes knowing the biomes animals are in? Anyone else? I think it's kind of fun. But, that's me. Let's see. Dogs are mostly domestic. I guess some of them, if you think about like wild dogs, they live in, I think, deserts, or it might be sandy brush, but whatever. Biomes for hares, I would say plains. Meadows aren't really a biome, so I'd say forest, right? Forest meadows. And they are also domestic, right? Been domesticated. Actually, I think all of these have been domesticated in a way. And by domestic, because these are biomes, we just mean people have them in their houses, right? Dogs are more domesticated than cats, which are much more domesticated than hares, which are much more domesticated than lizards. I don't think anyone's ever been able to truly domesticate a lizard. We put them inside of cages, and that's kind of it. We take them out and we look at them every once in a while, and they look at us back with their dead eyes, and then they go, and they taste us, But whatever. That's lizards. I don't have problems with lizards. I actually love them. I think they're awesome. But we have definitely not domesticated them. So, yeah. Domestic, etc. Right? Okay. And then, yeah, we'll just finish this out real quick. This is that kind of, thing I wanted to avoid having to do in front of you guys so that, we could just have it done. But, tortoises are desert, forest, and plains, I think. And then birds are like what? They're everywhere. There's birds everywhere, man. They're in desert. Well, they're less in desert. I mean, there are some. I guess there's some. I should leave it. Forest, plains, savanna, and domestic, right? So they're everywhere. Oh, it's like plains in Africa. It's a very specific kind of plain. The Lion King, that's all a savanna. Okay. Except for the part where they're singing in the forest and eating bugs. That's a rainforest, not a savanna. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Is that a rainforest? Whatever. It looks like a rainforest. It's a jungle. Sorry. Yeah. But we're getting a little off track here. So, okay. So here's our items. Cool. All right, so now what we want to do is have some buttons up here, right, that we can click on that then essentially filter the list even further than searching does, right? So what we can do is we can go down here and we can go to this, add on to the searchables. We can do search scopes, right? And then we have a scope and this. So scopes is a view, right? And then this is a binding. So what is it looking for here? First of all, it wants a binding to know what scope is currently, like what scope could be selected, right? And actually, now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure this needs to be like a scope something also. Scoped attribute container. No. Okay. We'll see. We'll see. If it works, it works. And if it doesn't, I need to quickly look something up. I'm going off of like an ancient memory here. So bear with me. All right. So we go $, and we need a binding. We need a state variable for our scope here. So we'll do at state var scope. And we will do animal biome as our scope type, like so. And then here we will toss in scope like this. And then here it does this scopes thing, although it's not really doing what I want, which is this. And it doesn't take anything in like this. Actually, is that the one I want? Hold on. There are two of them, right? Activation, strategy, and scopes now. Okay. All right, so the other thing that we'll want for this to make it a little easier to do is we want this to inherit from case iterable. That just means that we can do a for each on it and go through every single case, right? But, to start with, we can do a quick look here. And it is failing to build, which I can't remember if that's, is there an error? There is. What's the error? Parameter scope and call. Oh, because it's not set to something, right? Right. And we should have an all scope, right? Like this, right? So this equals .all. That way we don't have to worry about it. Cool, it starts out in all. Awesome. Now here in this search scopes, and again, I just want to look at that other one real quick because it's not quite what I remember. Okay, yeah, got it. Here in search scopes, we can do things like, say all, right, and planes, right, and so on and so forth. And then you set a tag, and the tag is going to be biome.all here, like this, right? And here it's biome.tag, or not .tag, sorry, .planes, right, like that, right? But it's still not quite showing up. One sec, let me just pull up my, I have an app that I did this in like literally last night. When I say ancient memory, I mean last night. That's where I'm at in my life right now. Have pity on me. And then also forgive me as I take 2 seconds to quickly look this up over here. All right, where's my scopes at? Okay, so scope like that. Oh, I did it manually. Huh. Right, I didn't actually use their thing. Okay, quick look at the documentation. And I'll pull this up so you can participate now, because I'm no longer looking at my own private code that I don't want you to see. All right, so we're going to go to Swift UI scopes. All right, so here we talk about the scoping. Yeah, there's enum, sure, publish variable scope, product scope, right? Okay, it's fruit, great. We apply it, product list, etc. Searchable, sure. Tokens in searchable. Oh, that I think that might be it. Yep. Okay, cool. We did the tag and everything right. We just didn't do this tokens piece. Forgot about that. Okay, so if we go back to our code here, we go to searchable. So, and we can do a new one just so we don't, ruin things. Like I said, there's a million of these. Here we go. Here they are. Tokens. Yeah, right? Tokens, token, etc. Right? So, and we want to also have just our text. Yeah, cool. Okay, searchable with tokens. So here we can just do tokens with prompt. Is there one where prompt is an option? Yeah, this one. Cool. Okay, so now we'll do for our binding filter. Our tokens is going to be scope, right? And then token blank here is going to be basically a sort of view. They're not doing the thing right, so I'm just going to say token in like this, right? Like this. Is that right? Is that what we're looking at here? Token in. Yeah, I did it right. What's it yelling at me about? Requires that animal biome conform to random access collection. Is it the instance or the type? Okay, let me double check this here. Product scope conforms to hashable. Okay. Model.scope. Model.scope. Right. Oh, I see. Okay. Right. Got it. Okay. Sorry. Bear with me. Okay. So what I was doing was more for the custom setup, which is what I remembered doing because that's what I did last night. Which I needed to do because I wanted to customize it more. It's my own thing. Okay. So here, now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at product list. Right. This is going to be now, we want to move this searchable somewhere where we have access to the item so that we can take a look at its biome, right? And that's okay. You put a searchable in here, it'll work just fine. So here we're going to say tokens, and then we're going to say, what is it? Items model.tokens. Where is model.tokens defined? They've got model.searchText, model.tokens token. Where do they define it? They don't define it up here. Sometimes I hate their examples. They're just so, yeah. Also indicate different scopes like search suggestions. Yeah, I know. Yeah, okay. Tokens, blah, 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 blah. All right, we'll figure it out. So here now we can say item, like so, dot, just items like this, right? And now search scopes. It's going to get moved down to here, like so. And then rather than scope, we're going to do item dot. Are we not where item is? Thought I should have access to item here. Item dot biome. Cannot find item. Okay, about this. Doesn't seem to care about that one. Interesting. Yeah, sorry, their example leaves a lot to be desired here. Oh, is it because... Yeah, well, I tried. I don't want to spend too much time, I don't want to waste too much of your time trying to debug SwiftUI here when there's other things we can look at. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shelve scopes for now, and then we can come back to it later after we've looked at some of the stuff that, some of the other stuff that's on tap, because that is also important. So, okay. All right, so let's go over to our show image here. Now, let's also go ahead and take this and we're going to move it into its own file, just because that way we can have its own preview. I don't know what I called it, but I'll just call it animal view because it's now looking at an animal specifically. And then we're going to put it here like this, and we're going to call it animal view. And now animal view is going to yell because it needs item to be passed in, right? So we will just pass it in an animal that we create. Name is going to be camel, and then we'll just leave it like that, like so. because we made the other two something that doesn't have to be set. All right. And now it's still yelling at us about an error back in there, right, because we changed the name, so this now needs to be animal view. Cool. Okay, so now we have animal view separately over here, so we can look at it directly without having to worry too much about clicking on it every time we want to test a change that we've made, okay? Now, camel doesn't exist in the image library, right? So this system image doesn't work, but that's okay. We're gonna make a change, okay? So one thing that I want to do is download an image of the animal from the internet. The way to do that is, and then display it, right? The way to do that is using something called AsyncImage. Right now we've been using image with a system name, okay? You can go to the internet and find a camel, picture of a camel, or whatever, right? This looks, look at this good boy. Look at that. And then you can save it, right? And then you can add it to your, project's, resources, right? You can add it to your assets like this. Then you can refer to it by name, right? However, that's not always an option. Sometimes you want to be able to dynamically load new, images that get sent to you by an API. A lot of you will probably be doing this in your final project. You can do this in a number of ways. Typically, an API will give you a URL, right? They'll send a URL to you, and then it's on you to download and display the image, okay? So you can do that in your model. When you first create it, you can download the image and store it locally in memory. That takes up a lot of space. Typically, especially if you have a few hundred items that you're looking through in a list, you want to be able to load the images only when they appear on screen. You want to lazy load them, only when you need them. The best way to do that in SwiftUI is using something called AsyncImage, all right? So, whoops, I want to do this just to make sure I have the right thing here. Okay. So the best way to, or not the best way, but like a way to use AsyncImage, right? First thing you'll need is a URL, okay? And we're gonna get a different URL for each animal, right? So let's go back to our animal here, and we're gonna define image URL like this, and we'll call it URL just straight up. And then this is optional and nil, okay? So we're gonna say, if we want, we can add an image URL to an animal, right? And now, over here, we have our test camel, okay? And we're gonna add an image URL, all right? So here, we're gonna create a URL, right? What is it? URL, string, okay? And now we're going to take the URL of this by clicking copy link, all right? And put it into a string here. Cool. All right, so now our camel, well, that's worse. Now this URL is for this camel is stored, okay? Which means we can access it in our views here when we need it, right? So we're gonna continue to have this image available. We're not gonna get rid of it. It's there as a fallback in case we don't have a URL for that animal, right? So now we can go and we can say AsyncImage, all right? And we have this URL and URL content and all this stuff, right? So to start with, you can just pass it a URL. So we can just say item image URL. And nothing happens, right? Now, a part of that, there are a couple things here. But to start with, first, make sure that the URL you picked works, okay? It didn't, right? It didn't actually copy the link. Copy image link is what you want, right? Look at this. This is just a Wikipedia page. That's not an image, guys. This is an image. Look at that glorious hump, okay? Just look at it, sticking off the screen and everything. Obviously, this is a problem, right? It's way too big, okay? So one thing you'll want to do, right? You make it resizable, okay? Aspect ratio, content mode fit, right? Dot frame, width 128, height 128, right? Like we're trying to do all the same stuff that we did before. We don't need to set a navigation title. That's fine. Honestly, we should be putting that on the VStack anyway, because it's kind of high level, right? And then it starts yelling at you. It's like, oh, there is no resizable. There is no aspect fit, right? It's like, what are you talking about? It's an image, right? Well, kind of, but not exactly, right? It's an async image, which means it's more of a container that could have an image in it or something else, right? So, how do we actually, like, you know, change the image and stuff, right? Well, one of the overloads for this is called this one, URL content placeholder, okay? So URL content placeholder is kind of the one you'll probably want to use the most. Scale's not bad, but, you know, whatever. So here we'll do item.image URL, okay, and we can close this out. All right, bye-bye, camel. And now we can do this, all right? So here we're going to basically be able to modify the image. So we can place image here like this and then do modifiers on it as if it was an image that we had put into a Swift UI view. So here we can do resizable, right? We can do aspect ratio, .fit, you know, we can do all the things that we did to our system image. Width 128, height 128, okay? Now it's not updating over there because we still have, you know, this. And now placeholder is what we show while we're loading the image, okay? So like you can say, you know, camel, right? Now it's gonna be really hard to kind of get this to show up ever because this image just loads really, really fast. And also Swift has now cached it, right? And it's kind of hard to, like, you know, slow it down enough so that you can actually see, right? What you can do is basically you know, practice what you want this placeholder view to be outside, you know, like underneath, and then move it in, and then it'll probably work okay, right? So, and you saw it there briefly, actually. If we do this, yeah, there it is. See, little word camel, right? Tiny, tiny word, disappears. If we do this, we'll say font dot custom size. Oh gosh, that's not what I wanted. Dot system size. There we go. We'll make this like really, really big, like 128. Yeah, there it is. Just a hot second, right? Still, yeah, big camel. Then back down to the image. Okay, and this image can be a little bit bigger, right? Like that, if we wanted it. Okay, cool. But you know, just displaying the text camel here, right? Or you know, the item or whatever, right? Item name, okay? You know, it still does camel, right? But it's not exactly what you want when you're loading something. The thing that you specifically want is called a progress view. Progress view is a spinner that kind of spins and does stuff. I'm trying to remember. So they have a style, right? And that's basically, you know, is it circular? Is it linear, right? A linear progress view is a bar. It's a progress bar that fills up over time. A circular progress view is a spinner, right? And we've talked about spinners before. We like spinners. Spinners are good. And so then there's also, I think it's called control size. Yeah, so we can say control size large, like so, right? Now, again, it's really hard to see it in this kind of time frame. So what we can do is just mess up this a little bit, like so, right? Oh, it still works. Oh, that's weird. Can we just say blah, 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 like that? Yeah. Okay, so now it's going to try to load this URL and fail, and the image will never load. So instead, we're just seeing what is there in the meantime, okay? And it is this, right? You can also do other things on your async image, right? In order to kind of show the shape of it, if you will. Like, for example, this frame thing you can actually put out here, right? So that it applies to everything. And then you can do a clip shape, which is a really cool thing that does like, you can do a rectangle with corner radius, right? Of like 5.0, like that or something. And then, you change the background color, background to like, gray, right? And now you've got this nice thing, right? It looks kind of nice. Although you want to change your background color before you clip your shape. And then, I can't tell. It has a corner radius, right? Yeah, I think so. The corners are tapered, right? Here, we'll just make it really big and I can see, yeah, right? And now it looks like an app icon is going to be there or something, right? And then we can go back and get our camel link once again and put it in here just fine. Excuse me. There we go. Like so, right? And it's constrained in, and it looks like an app, and where it doesn't fit properly, there you can see the gray behind, right? And there's all sorts of more things that you can do. And again, this is fit and finish. Don't do this yet. Not at first. Make sure everything works, then go and do this, right? Right. Okay. Any questions about AsyncImage before I quickly talk about the toolbar and things you can do in that? Okay. All right, so let's go back to our content view. All right, so in our content view, and actually if you go like here, you'll see, everything we did is still there kind of. You'll want to put like an if, the URL exists, then do this, otherwise do that, right? We didn't bother, but it's very simple. You just do an if else block on whether or not URL is nil or not. Yeah, so one of the things that we want to do is, switching over to something here, one of my notes. Cool. So let's say we want to be able to add animals, right? Just put them in, just create them, right? The way that you would do that is by having a add button somewhere, right? And where did our search bar go? I got rid of the search scopes, but I guess I also got rid of the search bar. Whoops. All right, that's easy. Searchable filter. There we go. Oh, what did I miss? There we go. Yeah, okay. There's our search bar. So we want to be able to have like a plus button up here, right? So that we can add an animal, okay? In order to do that, you need to use what's called the toolbar. This stuff talks about a navigation bar, like navigation title, navigation bar. Navigation bar is a concept that existed in UIKit. It exists less in SwiftUI. It's still there just because a lot of the stuff is still named that, but they prefer for you to largely use something called the toolbar. The toolbar is basically, you take this, you create this modifier, and then within here, you create toolbar items that you then use. So for example, if we wanted to add the ability to create something, right, we would do toolbar item. And then within here, this is just, we can just style a view. So we can create a button, right? And that button is going to have a, let's see, where's the button system image? This one. So we're going to do this, right? So our localized string, title key, we're going to leave that empty for now. Our image string, we're going to use plus, right, for a plus button. And then our action here is going to be to create a new animal, okay? So here we'll do animals, or not animals, sorry, items, I think, right, is what it's called. Yeah, items. So we'll do items.append, right, and then we'll create a new animal. And we'll create our camel friend, right? So camel, right? And we'll even create the URL just for fun, right? Just that it can be there, like this. Cool. Obviously, don't do this inline here, right? And we won't be shortly. So, right? Okay. So now when we click this plus button, a camel gets added, And we can click on it, and we're back. We're looking at our camel friend again, right? It's great, okay? Awesome. We love our camel buddy. But, we want to be doing this in a more programmatic way, right? So, this plus button, we want to modify it further. However, before we do that, if we can add stuff, and the problem is, of course, that we're just adding more camels, right? If we wanted to, so we're adding stuff, great. We're gonna look at a better way to add stuff shortly, where the user's actually inputting information to add. But for now, let's take a quick look at deleting something, okay? So there's kind of two ways that users expect to be able to delete things from lists that are editable in iOS. What are those two ways, my people who presumably use iOS phones? If you are looking at a list of things and you want to delete birds because you hate birds, what are you going to do it? Anyone? Bueller. You swipe from the right side to the left side on that item. Or you click the edit button and then hit the little red minus symbol. Those are the two things that you expect as an iPhone user to do when you want to delete something from a list. Each of those things is a different thing that we can set up, okay? So the first one that we want to set up, okay, is just delete. Swipe from the right to the left. So on a for each, you can't do this on a list, okay? But you can do this on a for each. On a for each, you can call the modifier on delete. And if you do this, you are given an index set, okay? Which, they call them index sets, they call them offsets, right? They basically, it's just where the item that's being deleted is in your list, okay? And now you can say items.remove at offsets, okay? And now we can delete things from our item set and they just go away, right? And like if we try and search for bird, it's gone. It's gone forever, at least until we edit the code and it comes back, right? So that's on delete. The other thing that you can do is create an edit button. Now, edit buttons used to be really complicated to set up, especially in UIKit. They're simpler now in UIKit, and they're even simpler in SwiftUI. So in SwiftUI, when you want to do this, you can say toolbar item with placement. Now, placement is where do you want this toolbar item to be? There's a bunch of options here, including bottom, right? So you can actually say, you want a bottom bar to exist, and you just display text, hi there, right? And now it's on a bottom bar, okay? So this is how you can add, like edit buttons and stuff down here, right? In this kind of bottom bar area, which some apps do that now. For like compose new message or whatever tends to be down there, stuff like that. However, what we want to do, because the thing people expect in iOS, right, for editing, okay, is navigation bar trailing, right, which is actually, sorry, not navigate, top bar trailing, my bad. Top bar trailing, right? And again, they're trying to phase out the navigation bar stuff because that's old, right? So now, you could put a button here that does stuff and everything. However, because editing a list is such a common task, Apple has set it up so that if you have a list and you are adding a toolbar item to it, and you just add to that toolbar item an edit button, it will handle everything correctly for you. So now if you hit edit, you get the delete thing, right? Which is pretty cool. You can do the whole delete thing, right? And then be done, and that's it, okay? Awesome, cool. So, great. Now we took our deletion segue. Let's go ahead and look back here. We want to be able to create animals in a way that isn't kind of weird, right? We want to be able to actually like append an animal, okay? The way we can do that is by utilizing sheets, actually, interestingly enough. So one of the things that we'll want to do is have a state variable for editing animal, right? And rather than editing, we'll say adding, just because editing and adding tend to be different, actions, right? And this is going to be, the is presenting flag that we're going to use for our sheet, okay? And here, we'll just delete this for now, or comment this out for now. So here we'll go dot sheet is presented. We have our adding animal, like so, right? And now we want to show the user basically a sheet that lets them create an animal, right? To start with, we're just gonna let them basically just kind of put in the name, just to be simple. That's the only thing that's required for an animal, and we have limited time here. So for this, you typically will want to use a form for entry, for like filling out a bunch of different fields, and then text field, of course, as we talked about on the quiz, right? So here we're going to say animal name, right? And then here we have a binding, right? And so this is going to be something, again, a lot of this you'd want to do in a new view, right? Like just a view that can be presented in many different contexts that creates an animal and returns it essentially, right? But for now, we're just going to say animal name string equals like this, and we'll call this new animal name, right? And so now here for our binding, we will do new animal name like this, okay? All right, that's all good. So now what we want to do is actually get to this, right? And also do something when this is submitted, right? So there is an on submit, okay, that we can do. And now we can say items dot append, right? And here we're going to create a new animal named new animal name, whatever it currently is, okay? So this is when we submit our form on this sheet. Got it. Cool. Okay. So now let's go ahead and look at how we get the sheet to show. We need to set this bound Boolean to true. So we go adding animal equals true when we hit the button plus, like so. So now when we hit plus, instead of adding a camel, we get a sheet, and it has a text field. Now, it should have text on it that says animal. It should have maybe a submission button, all sorts of stuff, right? We're not going to bother with that for now, just because. So now we're going to, say camel, and then we're going to hit enter. Now, because the keyboard isn't showing up and stuff, enter doesn't really do the submission the way that we really want it to, right? So I believe when you have a button in a form, then it counts. But we can also have this button like do the work for us as well. So this button will be submit, right? And then or save maybe is a better one that users might expect more so, right? And then we will do this item.appends thing here in button, okay? And then we will also dismiss the sheet because we don't need it anymore. We are done. We finished the work, right? So we are no longer adding an animal, okay? Right. Sorry, it's not a binding when I'm setting it. Okay, so we hit plus. Cool, there's this save button, really nice, right? And we're gonna call this camel, okay? And then we hit save, and camel has been added to our list. Very nice. We can click on it. There's no URL, right? That's a different thing, right? Like we could try and add a URL thing here, right? Or an image picker, right? I think image picker or something like that. Yeah, there's file picker, file manager. Yeah, that gets very complicated very fast. But there's a bunch of things you can do. For now, we could just have a text field, that's like animal image, right? And then this is going to be new animal image URL, right? And then we need to obviously create that, right? Like this. Okay. And now when we create our animal, we will try to give it a animal or a URL. Name animal, what is it? Image URL, something like that. Yeah. And then we'll do URL string new animal image URL, like that. And now the user will have the option to input a URL, right, that can be used. So, obviously not the best user experience on iPhone, right? But, it works okay here, right? Where's the paste button? Autofill. Can I not paste into this? That's hilarious. Okay, so I can't paste into here. You'll just have to pretend that you could paste into here. It would totally work, I promise. We could actually run it in the simulator. That would probably make it show up or work correctly. So we'll get that going. Simulator takes a hot second to load up. Here we go. Get started, attach the debugger, begin logging, all that fun stuff that we don't care super much about, but that's okay. There we go. Okay, so now we go here, we'll type camel, and then we will paste our image. And now when we go to see the camel, it's this glorious bastard right here, okay? Any questions about the edit buttons and being able to edit lists, deleting things, adding items, etc.? Awesome. Okay. Let's talk about your final project, because we do not have time to go into search scopes. I am sorry. I might create a little discussion thing or something like that to cover search scopes, but that will not be done today, unfortunately. So, final project. Let me pull this up. Where is it? Oh, I guess this is it, right? This is my only Firefox window. Is that so? Sorry, I've got too many windows over here. I'm trying to keep them all in line, Let's see, Canvas. All right. Yeah, I need to log in. Sure, that's fine. Okay. At least it's not asking for my Duo thing anymore. Okay. Assignments. Final project. All right. This should be available to you now. If it's not, please let me know. Your final project, as I said before, is going to be broken up into multiple pieces, okay? These multiple pieces do have due dates. Oh, my formatting here is weird. Don't worry about it. I'll fix it before I leave the building today. But essentially, your goal is to build an app that wraps around an API and displays information from that API. I will also be asking that you persist some sort of data in between user sessions. Now, we haven't looked at how to do that yet. I had planned to do it today, but we hadn't gotten through enough Swift UI stuff for me to be able to get to Swift data. That editing stuff that we were doing on the list is kind of required for Swift data to make any sense. So next class, we'll be looking at Swift data and how to persist data between different states. You have 4 weeks to do this project. It's broken up into 4 sections. At the very beginning, the very first thing that you're going to do is you're going to pick your API and you're going to give a design of your app. Now, the design for your app can just be a description for the screens and what the users can do on them. You could do a drawing and take a picture of it, right? You could create a multimedia presentation, a diorama, I don't care, right? As long as you can submit it digitally, okay? You probably can't submit a diorama digitally. I guess if you bring it in and show it to me, I will give you credit for that, right? That's fine. I know some people do actually build app prototypes using pieces of paper, now that I think about it. So that's a valid option too. Whatever. The point being, I just want to know that you kind of have a basic plan for what your app is going to show, what data it will have in it from the API that you're using, and what API you're using, so that I can let you know, hey, you're not going to be able to get this done. It's too much, scale it back. Here's a suggestion on how. Or, hey, this is kind of too basic. You're not going to have what you need to actually hit all of the requirements for the project. Here's how you can get there with your API, okay? So there's basically kind of a back and forth, because I don't want this to be, I could give you all of that guidance up front if you were all using the same API and building the same app, but I want each of you to pick an API that has data in it that interests you and build an app that you might actually try to use if it were ever finished and brought to a production level, okay? Whether you care about books or recipes or lizards or camels, right? Whatever API you pick, okay, is gonna be that. It's gonna be what you wrap around. Now, I have a list of suitable APIs that I will be posting into a discussion, okay? It's not up yet, it doesn't exist. I will be putting that up after class today. In that discussion, I will have a list of suitable APIs. Because I want everyone's app to be different, everyone needs to pick a different API. So when you pick an API to use, please post it in the discussion so that everyone else can see it, so that they don't pick the same one. It will be first come, first serve. I'll send out a notice as soon as the discussion is up. There's 5 of you. I do not expect a lot of conflict over this, okay? Likewise, if there is a API that is not in my list that you're interested in using, you can suggest that as well. I will need to look at it though and verify it. All the ones that are in the list are pre-approved and ready to go. You don't need OAuth, you don't need credentials, you don't need to create an account. They're just simple repositories that you can pull GET requests from, and they're basic, not basic, but they are limited enough in how they do stuff that I expect you'll be able to figure out how to do it, right? They're not doing anything super complicated like pagination necessarily. Some of them are, but they have other ways of accessing the data too. Are there any questions about the API selection process, which is what is due before class next week? Okay. After that, I will do a number of code reviews. For each code review segment, I will basically look at what you've written. I will pull down your project from a Git repository. I will build it. I'll compile it. I will run it on my phone. I will give you feedback on both the design direction, where you're going with it, and on your code structure, and if I see any potential problems for you in the future, to try and help guide you towards finishing your app by the end of the process. For the very first code review, I would suggest you try to have most of your workflows done. Not the fit and finish, God no. But being able to navigate through your app should be complete by that point, or close to, or at the very least, what's called the happy path, the thing that you expect people to be doing the most in your application, should be done by that point in time. If it's not, I would say you're not on pace to finish, because in development, the last 10% of completion tends to take 80% of the time, right? So you want to get the basics all blocked out, okay? So you'll send me a Git repository. I'll give you suggestions on things you can change. Great. The second code review, same thing. You're to send me a Git repository. I will give you feedback, okay? I am not grading these by a rubric necessarily or any other means. I'm not looking at your code and saying, oh, well, it's not where it needs to be yet, so you get points off. That's ridiculous. There will be a grade associated with whether or not you submitted your API selection and design, your Git repository, and so on and so forth on time, right? So there will be a small portion of your final grade, or final project grade will be tied to that, okay? Just submitting on time, right? But once I get the Git repository, I can just look at whatever the last commit was before the deadline and give you feedback on that. If it's exactly the same commit in the second review, I will count that as not being submitted, right, in terms of points. And then the final submission, again, it'll just be whatever's in the Git repository at the time of the deadline. And that's what I'll pull down, and that's what I'll look at and consider final, okay? there will not be extensions. So, cool. Okay, awesome. The requirements are thus. You will need to have a REST API that you pull down from, as we said, and that you will get model objects, and you will handle networking issues gracefully with alerts, and you will show nice messages to people and make them feel nice and happy, right? You'll have a navigation stack, at least one navigation stack or navigation split view, which we haven't really looked at, but if you look at the documentation, it's basically the same thing, except it works better on iPads, which I will not be testing your app on. You can have multiple lists or just one list, whatever, right? There should be a navigation title that's correct, and the back button should work. The stack doesn't do weird stuff, whatever, right? You should have a user interaction component to your app. So you should have a list view, at least one list view that you're displaying data from. It should be searchable, and it should be filterable, right? That's the same concept. Sorry, I reiterated myself here. I'll remove this requirement. Filterable and searchable are the same thing, right? And then there should be one further interactive element besides navigation, and this feeds into the data storage stuff, and we'll be looking more at how to do that next class, okay? But basically, being able to favorite something or edit some piece of data or something like that. A lot of the stuff that we just did, actually, the deletion and the adding and the whatever, that's all something that you would expect to be, that would fill this requirement, right? Lastly, data storage. You'll have some local data that you store using Swift data. This would be like marking some items from the API as favorites and then having a special filter or a different tab or list that you look at the favorite items in that kind of pre-filters it for you or even saves them locally to the store, right? A more advanced thing you could do with Swift data, and these are, again, ideas, right? Cache all the data that you get from the API locally and then do all of your updating from the API in the background so that you can constantly have something in front of the user with no spinners, right? That's a little harder to do. I don't know if I recommend that. If you're running ahead and you're doing really well and you're like way ahead of the curve, on like getting the timing done and stuff, go for it, take a swing. But this is something that stymies professional developers. So be careful with it. And then lastly, of course, any data that you persist using Swift data should automatically reload into your application when the user closes the app and brings it back up. So whatever you have decided to persist, you need to be able to close the app, reopen it, and the data is still there as you expect it to be. Cool. Lastly, you have a tab view with at least 2 tabs. You just need to have 2 tabs, 2 different workflow experiences in 2 different tabs. That's it. Here's some guidance. Start early. Me and Roming will be available. If you have any questions, if you're like, just please look at the code, I don't know what's wrong, we can do that. Not a problem. And aim to have your first pass of the workflow done by the first or second check-in, as I said. Don't mess with fit and finish until the end. So here are some screenshots of an example application that does something like I would expect you to do. This is one of the workflows, okay? You can look at all the characters of amiibos that exist. You can search amongst those characters, and then within you can see each different kind of amiibo, and then you can click on it and look at more details about that amiibo. Yeah. So, are there any questions about the final project here? Okay, cool. And then here we've got this if you want to take a look. Here we've got, link. There's all of the different links, right? You can see link. You can see releases, all the different kinds of games you can use it in and what it does, etc., right? This is a very simple API, very easy to use as a client. So yeah, cool. Okay. So yeah, okay. No questions, then we're all good. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.